we're going to move on to our panel now, where we dig into the 3D era and the tools and tricks that a number of retail brands are using in being able to move this technology forward. So joining me today is Cynthia Maller, who is the Director of Customer Magnetics for Art.com and Walmart. We also have Rafaela Camara, who is the Global Head of XR for Accenture. And we have Matthew Neutra, who is the Lead Experience Engineer for Bose, and he's got some really interesting things to show us. So, Cynthia, I'm wondering if you'll just give us a little bit of background of how you got into your role today and what are some of the interesting things that you're doing at Walmart as it pertains to 3D.
Thanks. I'm excited to speak. Thanks for having me. Well, I got here by way of traditional creative, which has to morph about every 5 minutes. And so as a creative director, I just keep up to date. And then in terms of internal operations, creative operations, this was a natural thing to jump into, to transfer what we already know about building organizations around assets. And, you know, at Walmart, I'm focused on home for Walmart and art. And we're doing exactly what, you know, Dr. Tom was talking about, looking to, you know, reassure people psychologically about their purchases. And so this is another great tool to do that.
Wonderful. Thank you. Rafaela, will you tell us a little bit about the XR practice that you're building today?
Sure. Welcome. Hello, everyone. Accenture XR is a global practice. We started it in 2017, so about three and a half years ago. And we really concentrate simply on how to use AR or VR to help our clients from an enterprise perspective or a consumer perspective, or thinking about completely new businesses, how to use AR or VR to achieve those goals. I think when Mike was talking about before about numbers and stats, if we just concentrate on the consumer side of the house today, because that's what we're talking about and retail and all that, and we use their numbers as well, Mike's numbers and artilleries, we really look at 2023 even being a little bit bigger than what he was talking about. And we look at it as being probably around $42 billion. And we split the value pools a little bit differently. We look at apps or experiences that consumers are going to be buying, the digital ads or the ads that are going to be served in AR or VR, the hardware and the infrastructure. So quite a bit of growth, and then we see, the way that we see it is in a 40 plus CAGR going all the way up to 2030, making this and AR specifically a huge opportunity for any brand who wants to reach a consumer.
Wonderful, thank you. And then we have Matthew Neutra, Lead Experience Engineer at Bose. And Matthew, I know that you're working on so many things, so I wonder if you can just give us a little bit of background of all the amazing things that you have been doing at Bose. And then if you've got anything to show us today, we'd love to see.
Sure. So I'm a Lead Experience Engineer at Bose, and what I have to do is to synthesize the tools that are available to tell stories and map them to the stories that we have to tell. And, you know, oftentimes, you know, people will look at a product like, you know, a Bose SoundLink Micro or SoundLink Revolve and think, okay, this is plastic and screws. But really what these things are little experience engines. They have very specific characteristics and they create certain experiences for the customers. And so oftentimes when we have something like this or something like this, we have to tell the story of what's inside and how it works and what the benefit is to the customer. So we have to connect the experience benefit to the customer who doesn't know anything about the product. So I'll share my screen and show some examples of how we do this. Another product, of course, is, you know, the Bose frames, which I'm wearing most of the time. And, you know, for products like this, customers don't know what this is. And so you have to really do some creative storytelling to connect the dots for people in their brains. So I'm going to share my screen real quick. And you're looking at my iPad here. And I'm going to pick up my iPad and look at it. And here I am. I'm going to actually take off my actual frames so I can try on my virtual frames here. And so in this particular experience, we're doing a couple of things. We're giving people a sensory experience in a situation where either they can't try on this product or they're not willing to. In the age of COVID, people don't want to put things on their face. And so I can change the style and size of these glasses and then find the version that I like. And then once I've had that experience, I can actually take a picture and either email it to a friend or to myself to remind me to continue this customer journey. And then another experience that I'll show you real quick, thanks to the folks over at Metaverse, Alan Smithson and team. This is an augmented reality experience for frames as well. So the way that you would engage an experience like this is maybe at retail with your mobile device, you would see a Bose product and you would scan a QR code, and that would open up this, this experience that gives you more information about that product. Now, this could be a retail experience. It could also be an at-home experience that gives you information about how to troubleshoot features of the product, or how to, engage with the product at different stages of the customer journey. In this case, this would be perhaps at retail where you're learning about the technology inside, but this could also give you information about how the product gets maintained or fixed or reset or things like that. And so I can actually switch over to AR mode here and scan my desk and drop the product onto my desk and interact with it physically and digitally to do things that I could not normally do. For example, understand specific features of the product and so forth. And so, all of this is really interesting, but it all falls in this process that we use to create experiences, always starting with the customer experience. So first thing you do is define the experience with the product, whether it be a speaker or a pair of glasses or whatever. And then you break it down into the work that you have to do to bring that experience to life for the customer. So you have an idea of an imagined experience, and then across all of the different domains that you could work in, you can actually realize the experience through the product and the way it's designed, through the technology that's driving the product, through the audio, video, and stills talking about the product, through the physical spaces where we experience the product, and then finally the story that we weave. And in my world, we work between there are two worlds that I live in. And one world is the prototype world where I can do something once to create the experience by, leveraging technology, leveraging content, leveraging all these different domains. And then what the customer sees is the production version of that. So we work on these prototypes like the things that I just showed you, which are not in the world yet. And then we battle harden them, test them with customers, test them to make sure that they maintain the brand image and that they are serving the needs of the customer. And once we've done that, we make them producible so that we can make 10,000 of those experiences, send them out into the world, and never see them again. They'll go out and do that job. But coming back to the core of what I do and what the team I work with does is to identify the experiences that we want people to have at all levels and all stages of the customer journey, and then make sure that the storytelling that we're doing from birth to end of life of this product are supported by this story. And at Bose, we have this philosophy called double helix, where as we design the product, we are designing the story to create the DNA of the customer experience. And that's sort of the core of what we do.
Wonderful. Thanks, Matt. It's amazing to see some of those demos coming to life. With COVID and in this post-COVID consumer world, there is growing need and importance around our digital twins, because we're seeing that the same asset can be used between product design and discovery to supply chain, all the way to the e-commerce experience and even post-purchase. And so, Cynthia, I'm wondering if you can tell us a little bit about digital twinning in your world? And I know that you're dealing with a lot of brands, and I don't know how many SKUs, probably 100 million SKUs. Is every product going to have a digital twin?
I love the question. First of all, I want to acknowledge that, you know, COVID, it's a COVID world, and it's pretty horrible. But it has shortcutted people's understanding of how technology can enhance emotion. I remember, and I will answer your question, this happened one other time in my career, which was 9/11. And in 9/11, chat became something that was goofy to something that was essential. And I see a parallel here. In terms of whether or not things have a digital twin, so operationally, which is I think one of the core things that we're talking about here today, I don't know the answer. However, if you want to come together as a company and understand the beauty and the value of AR, the assets, however you use them, you either have to have an awareness of what is and isn't being twinned, or make the decision that everything will be twinned, which takes a long time. So I think ultimately we would like to, but you know, with Walmart, you have to ask, do we need a digital twin of a chicken breast or hamburger patty? You know, certainly furniture, electronics, all kinds of other things that you buy. So we have interesting decisions that we make a lot at Walmart for what really needs to be modeled. I would like everything to be, but it's going to take time. Right now we're faced with the question of what is necessary, because you have to operationalize these things and be very careful in how you forecast. So the answer is, I don't know.
Well, that sounds great. I think we're seeing a lot of benefits to having master 3D models and being able to use them across retail departments. Rafaela, I'm wondering if you see the need today or in the future for having a chief 3D officer. It's somebody that is sitting there looking at the master 3D assets and how to better use them to help business units collaborate with each other within the retail org.
That's a very good question, a very good idea. I even wonder if the term chief digital officer is not going to be a little bit different, or is going to change a little bit what functions it has. But attaching, let me progress off of what Cynthia was saying before. We, for example, have a large CPG company as a client, and for them, we've been doing and producing all of the 3D assets for any product that they have for a number of years, and we do that globally. And those 3D assets are then, or twins, are used for a variety of different reasons, from figuring out what is the best packaging, or how do I create this, where is it going to fit, so for research type of purposes, but also research directly with consumers to see what they might want to buy or not buy. And then you can also use them for immersive marketing, AR type of applications. Or you can even use them to provide them to the retailers that have your product. So I almost don't see, I think it would be very difficult for Walmart to have a digital twin of every single product they carry. And even right now in the 2D environment, I'm not so sure that it's Walmart necessarily producing all of them, or if sometimes there is not kind of like an exchange of some kind. But this idea of having to have a 3D map of the world, and then a 3D map, or a 3D twin, I should say, of everything else that's in the world, that could be natural based, or they could be produced by a specific company, is certainly something that we will be getting to, and that companies have to be planning to do, because we're going from a 2D environment to a spatial environment. And the only way to be in a spatial environment is to have a 3D asset. So yes, you're talking about products. For example, you're also talking about stores themselves. So another example I can give you is Diesel. We launched a virtual commerce store called Hyperboom, that is basically a 360-degree digital sales platform where they can put different brands, and each brand has its own specific environment or store virtually, where you can bring not even just the consumers, but also just the retailers or the different shops come in and buy. Right now that they're not able to do it physically. So I see more and more of that happening.
Wonderful. Now, Matt, you're doing a lot of demos with 3D, and you're having to pull assets from different parts of the organization. And so there's some stuff that you're doing within the innovation team, and then there's certain things that you are building for the in-store environment around 3D assets. Are you seeing any really big opportunities around how to take these assets or barriers and things that we should work as an industry to try to break down?
I have one word for you: workflow. There's the huge opportunity is workflow, and no company in the world says, oh, how do I get fancy technology and come up with, and wrestle it to the ground so I can do something. People don't think that way. They have an idea of something they want to do, and then they have a way of doing it. And the distance between those two things varies based on workflow. So if you have a good workflow, it looks like this. If you have bad workflow, it looks like this. And some people tolerate bad workflow and muscle through that leap every time they have to wrangle assets. So in my world, these things start out as CAD models in NX, which is a CAD asset management system. And we have a very tightly managed workflow to go from that super high density mesh with all of the screws and internal parts to an AR experience. So that the metaverse demo that I just showed required some workflow. And that's the opportunity that people are going to really, if people do it right, are going to tackle that and use the tools that bring their workflow more like this, so that they can rapidly iterate experiences, because all people really want from a customer point of view is a great experience. And as a company, all you want to do is creating experiences. And, when I started my career at Bose 18 years ago, we basically helped to invent digital signage with Roku, which eventually became BrightSign. And the thing that we wrestled with the most was the workflow, not only for the system integration of these electronic parts into a display or into a digital store experience, but also the media workflow. Because when you create a new format like VR or AR, the tools eventually meet up with the technology. And but the time between, we're sort of in this moment in time now where the workflow for 3D assets and leveraging those for AR and VR is approaching usability. You still need specialized skills to do this stuff, but eventually, especially if Apple has anything to do with it, the workflow will be more like iMovie for 3D assets. And when you hit that tipping point is when you're going to see an explosion of applications. But until then, the opportunity for people like us who are in this industry and know how to use these tools, we can take advantage of that time between it being hard and it being easy to, make progress as businesses serving, commerce and serving folks who are leveraging these tools to tell stories.
Right. So, we're seeing that there's new workflows for each type of application that's attached to using a 3D asset, whether that be in a consumer experience or whether it's internally from design and manufacturing. Cynthia, when we look at these workflows, do we need a whole bunch of new people to run the workflow? Can we use the people that we already have? Are we building new teams from the ground up? Is everything with the vendor? How do we get the most out of our current teams around some of these 3D assets?
Well, I always like to say no colleague left behind. So I don't believe we need new teams. Everybody attending today, everybody on the panel really switched on, really bright. And this is another tool. It's another type of asset. Certainly there are people, so from a creative standpoint, there are people who are getting really, really good at making these models and making renders and textures, and that's important. But when it comes to strategic thinking, or even when it comes to like styling a digital room or the camera angle or using the model in ads and immersive ad experience, everybody that's there now has something to give. So when it comes to the org structure of creative team, which is usually a central service, I think that we've got a lot of great people out there already doing storytelling. And they don't have to become experts in the software necessarily. They just have to understand it well enough to know what it's capable of and then bring it into their storytelling in the right way. Same with marketing, same with even finance. You know, everyone involved now has the capability to leverage this amazing thing, which probably to a lot of people seems exotic. I can't take part. I don't know what it is. I don't know how to work the software. None of that matters, because this is telling stories to the customer, and this is another tool, right? This is a moment in time. This is this technology, and this is now. But that's not how it's always going to be. So it's really about looking to everybody that you work with and giving them the encouragement and the love and the inclusiveness to know that they can come along for the ride and bring what they already have. So, and it's also not reasonable to say, oh, we need whole new teams. That's just, unless you start your own company, which I'm not going to do. It's not practical.
Yeah, just to support.
And I would say, oh, go ahead.
Just to support what you're saying, Cynthia. Again, all of these things are tools. You know, when I started at Bose 18 years ago, we were using standard def video, and 5.1 was just becoming a thing. And, you know, you just have to learn how to leverage those tools to tell the story differently, like going from black and white film to color film to, panoramic color film, et cetera, on and on and on. They're all just tools, and we are creatives. You're a creative. You know, Raphael is a creative. We're all in this together as colleagues. And the most important thing here is the purpose of these tools is three things. It's to connect people to other people, connect people to information, and connect people to culturally significant experiences. That's it. Mm-hmm. And whether I use a hammer or a screwdriver to do that doesn't matter.
Right. I would just add one more thing. Obviously we come from a service side, so it is our job, in fact, to help the different companies figure out how to then build the stories or the solutions that they think about. So of course you don't turn everybody into an expert. You just make sure that they're expert of the product and the brand and the relationship with the clients that they want to specifically have. But one thing that I instead would push and say that has to be kept in consideration is, when you think about creating something, also go a little bit further out and figure out what the ROI is going to be of that specific thing that you want to do, and how would you envision building it at scale. Because if you go and you produce something that is really so difficult or complicated, or is so one-off that in any case you're not going to be able to replicate it, it's great to do that, but then that has its own specific function, versus thinking about it a little bit wider, which is really what you want. Otherwise, you're not going to be able to really reach consumers the way that you want to reach them. So we take that approach all the time, and that's how we guide our clients. But we ourselves often will do things that are a little bit more future oriented, because we need to try them ourselves, and we need to gain the knowledge for ourselves and for our clients, and then build it at scale for them.
Yeah, and by the way, it's not important right now or ever to get it perfect, because customers are always happy to follow us along on the journey, right? You think about gaming, movies, whatever it is. You know, if you look at the original Star Wars and the Star Wars now, you know, it's just storytelling. People know that it's not as good as it can be at every step of the way, but they're happy to come along with us. You don't have to get it right away. No way.
Yeah. I disagree a tiny bit on that, though. AR and VR are so much of an immersive experience that if the first time that people do it is not up to par, they find that it's too much work for not enough that I'm getting out of it. I might as well just watch a video. So I think it has to be a little bit.
So I'll add to that. You always have to have an experience goal. Like, you know, if you're designing a product, this has to have a certain acoustic performance, or it's not going out the door, right? And the same is true with VR and AR, or even video. Like, you know, if you're producing a video, it has to meet threshold in terms of quality, resolution, all the metrics that you would measure that with. And the nice thing about digital assets is that you have a little more latitude with digital assets. For, you know, part of my day job is, you know, making tens of thousands of displays that go out into Best Buy and Target and so forth. We love all our children, but we never want to see them again. They have to function, you know, flawlessly in a Walmart or a Target or a Best Buy. And so there's the best approach to any of these, you know, the application of any of these tools is to establish the bar for the experience, have clear measurable metrics to Rafaela's point about ROI, and then also have a chain of custody for that thing that you're putting out into the world. So if it's a digital experience, it has a birth, a life, and an end of life. And understanding the arc of that experience is really important too, because you have to manage that over time, and it costs the company. So if I'm putting out a display in the world, it costs Bose every time a milk run goes out to check on the health of the display. That costs money. Every time we update the content on the display, it costs money. With a VR experience, it's maintaining servers and things like that. And so if you take a holistic view of the experience that you're putting out to the world, building it costs something, keeping it in the world costs something, and taking it out of the world costs something. And as long as it's meeting the experience threshold and the financial threshold of it costs me this much to make and it's giving me this much in return, then you're on the right track. But it's very easy to get seduced by the shiny objects and technology. And when that happens, the wheels fall off the bus financially, the wheels fall off the bus experientially, and the wheels fall off the bus from a brand point of view, which is the most important thing. It takes 50 years to build a brand and 30 seconds to destroy it.
Right. So there's so many different tools and processes that we use across our organizations to be able to figure out, should we build this innovative tool and product? Should we test it? What's the data coming back? And then how do we justify it? I'm wondering if, 3D it's a digital asset, but does it provide a much greater value internally than any of the other 3D assets or the other digital assets we've used before? Does it give us the ability to become more efficient internally? Does it give us the ability to tell richer stories? And does it give us the ability to provide a richer customer experience in such a way that we cannot avoid 3D?
I would say absolutely yes. And it's not even just the 3D asset itself. It's the device and the devices that you use to do that. With a 3D asset, you can do detailed analysis on the design, on where does that fit or not fit, but also using it within a specific device on one side lets you bring the consumers directly in touch with a specific product. They can experience it, they can play with it, they can customize it, and you can get behavioral data because all of these headsets now have different ways of getting unspoken behavioral data directly from the consumers or the users. So it's something that you would not be able to do, not even in person. So the answer, I would say, is yes.
Yeah. Okay. I would also say that I always use my nap time test. I'm always in the pursuit of increasing my nap time. And so if you can recycle an asset over and over and over again, and you can apply it across a broad, you can amortize that investment in that asset over as many experiences as possible, you're on the right track. And so your question about, is 3D unavoidable? I would say, given that the way that the mediums are changing, 10 years ago, I would have said, yeah, it's completely avoidable because people are just getting their heads wrapped around a high definition square box in front of them. But as time progresses, the medium changes. Like, people are watching less TV and they're using mobile devices more. And so you can say, yeah, human behavior is dictating that these assets have a bigger place in the communications landscape.
Right.
I want to add to that if I can. So in commerce, the golden thing is conversion. I mean, yes, it's engagement, but if people come in and come get what they want and leave, that's okay too. And when you're able to get surgically precise by testing and testing and testing, that's just so valuable, and it's actually really fun. And so what 3D assets let you do is show, and just speaking, for home, You can show all the colorways, all the materials. You can allow someone to look at it in lots of different rooms instead of just one product detail page, one photo. And then if you want to see the options, well, that takes a lot of effort. And so it's really wonderful for people like the UX team and the marketing team to realize, wow, I can take this asset and actually I can, let's say, when I was at Touch of Modern, we did this really great thing where let's say we had 3 different materials of something. We would put all 3 up and we'd rotate it and we set a time horizon, and whichever one was converting better, we took the other 2 down. And we can do that now kind of on steroids with 3D, because it is so much more efficient. And then that way, maybe it's not even about saving money, it's about reallocating and investing more and getting more precise with conversion. That's really exciting to me personally, because that's what we're trying to do, is get people connected to products in the fastest way, and hopefully lots and lots of products at once. So it is unavoidable because it's so practical. It's really shiny and exotic, but so practical, really. It's just wonderful.
Yeah, we have an entire solution area that we call VR research, or if you want, merchandising, in the case of something like, something being done at Walmart. We did it with Kellogg's. We are doing it with other clients, and basically we basically perform all the tests directly in VR, and doing that not only reduces greatly the costs and the time, and you can do more tests instead of just doing a few of them, but you also get different results. That could be just the product is the same, but it's where you place it maybe on the shelf that is different, or which category you place it in, or things of that nature. So there are so many ways of applying AR and VR, and reusing 3D assets across the entire organization, that I don't see any way that any company will not have to move and have everything twinned, so to speak.
Yeah. And the thing that I've been playing with specifically is that, using this technology, using 3D assets as a way to really live an omni-channel experience. Omni-channel has been buzzing around for a long time, and the way people execute on that is sometimes ham-fisted, sometimes really good. But having these digital twins that can live on a square screen, live on a small screen, and then live in, an augmented screen, really starts to break down the barriers between those sort of siloed experiences, brick and mortar, mobile, and home. And as those walls come down, as storytellers, we can then tell stories that paint across all of those domains seamlessly. And that's when we're really going to see customer engagement and personal human engagement increase and become much more meaningful to people, versus these sort of contrived, like you're at a Best Buy end cap, or you're now on your mobile app, or you're now on your home in the website. Those little boxes that, the edges of those boxes are going to start disappearing, so that you can have a story that blends across the entire, physical and digital experience.
Right. So when we look at 3D today, it's being used by a lot of different groups and a lot of different individuals, and some of it's secret, some of it's innovation, some of it's about new, e-commerce images that we need to lift conversion. What do you guys think is the best way for retail leadership to start driving deeper thinking around 3D? Is it about getting each one of the, the leaders from each one of the business units that's looked at it? Is it getting the people that are in it all day long? How do we leverage 3D in the richest way within our retail organizations?
I think, so I can speak from personal experience. When, I'm always pushing on the edges of the box internally at Bose, and it is always uncomfortable. It's not only uncomfortable for me doing the pushing, but it's uncomfortable for people being pushed on. And so, my best advice for people who are interested in really, truly exploring this is build a very small, nimble team that can do things quickly, cheaply, and break things fast. Because that's the only way that you're going to find experiences that map to products that you're trying to tell stories about. And then once you've built something that you feel, your core team feels good about, you can then start showing, not telling, to executive leadership the experiences that you've created and map them to business objectives. And it's always difficult, like even going from standard definition to high definition. Like, why would you do that? Oh, that costs money. That's equipment. That's investment. You know, there's this showing, not telling behavior, usually being done by a small advanced development team that can move the needle inside of organizations, because it's social engineering at that point. It's not technical engineering. People know how to make AR. People know how to make VR. But what they don't know how to do is to change the minds of people who are writing checks to do that work.
Right. Cynthia, what do you think? And how has your process, you know, evolved from where you started and where it is today?
Well, you know, it evolves because at first you do have people experimenting, and then they like to talk about their experiments. Walmart had the advantage recently to be part of the Kronos group. So we got together with publishers, software companies, and some of my most esteemed competitors. We got together in a room and we talked about standardization. And that sort of was impossible to ignore for folks back at the office, that this is a very positive thing in the industry. And some of the giants who started it, like, you know, we got IKEA, and then we got, of course, Shrenik at Wayfair is a genius, and even Amazon, everybody. And so when you take a look at the people that are getting on board, it no longer becomes this thing that's being done at some other building and it's really small and these guys are road showing it. It's just, that was impossible to ignore, and it was really actually wonderful. And so when I'm able to socialize what we're doing, I can socialize it in a way that doesn't, we're not talking about shiny, we're talking about industry standards, and, you know, telling the story about, we want to avoid the flash situation, we want to be the JPEG, and everybody's collaborating. It makes it very sound, very normal, really interesting. And I didn't have to do too much work because, again, the company that we were in, the company in which we were keeping in that room, was astounding. And that was just, so right now it's really about, all right, how do we make sure that nobody is constrained? How do we create assets that everybody can use and make sure we're communicating? And as a central service, I'm not really worried about what everyone's doing with the asset, because, you know, I'm sure they're doing fabulous things. I don't really have time to talk to everybody. I just want to make sure that the assets are created with all the level of detail that every group might need, and creating it once. Yeah. This is a challenge because it's so exciting that you got people creating models all over the place. You talk about digital twin. I'm trying to avoid digital quadruplets.
Right.
So it's, I hope that's an answer. I mean, it's very unsexy to talk about process and operationalizing this, but that is at the core of everything. It has to start there. Yeah. And I'm in very good company in the industry. I couldn't be more grateful to, you know, Williams-Sonoma, Wayfair, Target, IKEA, getting on board together.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. So, you know, Matt, I feel like you might be sitting in Bose trying to find out what assets might exist, right? And you might be pulling them from different parts of the organization so that you can do some of your work. Have you come across any strategies that, you know, have really helped you? You know, is it sending out, hey guys, I need an asset that's got this parameter? Are you setting those standards internally for some of the work that you're doing? How do you go about it, and how can we kind of follow lead?
So back in 2003, I tried to get our corporate communications team to hire a 3D team to focus on that. And there were 3 major attempts to do that. And then finally, about 5 years ago, as it became obvious that we were spending an incredible amount of money on 3D assets externally, we put together a very dedicated team of 3D artists internally to work with the engineering team. So every product engineering team has a mechanical engineering lead that works in the CAD system. And so in our communications group, we have 2 guys who focus specifically on topology and geometry to take those CAD models, put them into a state where they can be translated into all the different levels of detail. And that workflow then, the efficiencies gained there make it possible for us to internally iterate on those 3D assets. And then when we send it out to an external agency to do, say, you know, silhouettes or, you know, environmental stuff with 3D assets, what that vendor is getting is almost a fully baked cookie. Textures, geometry, everything. And so the cost of that external vendor is cut in half. The cost of the internal explorations is, you know, noise in the scheme of things. And so, you know, for example, that the 3D glasses example that I showed, I emailed our 3D guys. They sent me a packaged model. I sent it over to Metaverse. They did a little bit of clickety clack on the keyboard, and 12 hours later, I've got this demo. So it really just comes down to workflow. And yes, there's tons of unsexy stuff you have to do to get there. And most of it has to do with understanding the source materials that you're working with, understanding the destination, you know, the destinations for those 3D assets, whether it be television, online, immersive with AR, VR. And as soon as you know what the endpoints are, the beginning and ending endpoints, you can build the workflow in the middle quite easily. But it takes a lot of discipline to do that. And then in the process, you recognize where are the gaps in terms of human resources to keep that workflow alive.
Mm-hmm. Now, we've got a question that's come from Alan, who's over at Sephora. And Alan asks, is 2021 going to be the year where all retail orgs need to have a sound 3D strategy? Where, you know, we've got roadmaps and we've got executive level thinking about how we're going to roll this stuff out.
I think 2019 was the year.
Yeah, 2019 was the year that you had to have that together.
Yeah. 2018. You know, oh yeah.
I mean, hindsight is 2020. I mean, if had we known that we would be in the middle of a pandemic right now, that plan, you know, that kind of planning would be accelerated, I think. And now that we're in the midst of it, people are in sort of recovery mode, you know, coming off their heels, to make sure that they have the resources and assets to tell stories in the absence of brick and mortar. And, you know, there are plenty of other ways that you have to do that. Like for Bose, an audio company, not only are we doing virtual product stuff, but, you know, as an audio company, I'm actually focusing, it's actually a team within Bose focusing solely on audio digital twins. So right now you can't go to Best Buy and listen to the 3 models of soundbars that we have. So we've built an augmented experience where you can put on headphones and have a binaural experience to compare TV sound to all of our products. And so the visuals are not even part of the equation there. It's the listening part of it. And so people focus, when people talk about augmented reality, they're focused on the visual aspect of it, but there's so much more to it than that. There's the agency that you get in that experience. Like, what can I do as a user? That's one of the that's the equivalent of touch. And then there's the acoustic experience. And so when we have digital twins, there's a ton of research and ton of work going on in Game Engine and other tools that let you have an acoustic digital twin. So you can I can scan my room here, place a virtual Bose product in the virtual scanned room, and hear it as though it's in the room. And so absolutely people should be focusing on digital twin, but not just physical, visual digital twins, but also acoustic digital twins.
It's really interesting. It's really interesting. We have just 2 minutes left here. Is there anything, Cynthia or Matt, that you'd like to leave the audience with as we wrap up here?
Matt, go ahead.
Yeah, so I'll say all of this technology, whether it's VR or 3D models or any of that stuff, all of those things are just tools. The primary concern that people should have in creating experiences for people is making sure that what they're doing for their audience provides them with some benefit and a human connection. So imagine the perfect scenario is, as a salesperson, I'm talking to another person. In the absence of the salesperson, what can you do with these tools to continue that conversation?
Got it. And Cynthia?
I would say that don't ever stop being a customer. You know, sometimes it's really great. I have the benefit of not being a technologist, and most of the creative team, I make sure we go out, well, not anymore together, but don't ever forget that you're a customer too. And then if you do that, you'll realize exactly what you want to input into that experience and what makes sense. The other thing is, in terms of how organizations are evolving, I think it's still organizing around assets. And some of the biggest challenges, and people feel free to reach out to me, are, all right, how on earth are we going to, you know, house these assets? Where are we housing them? How do we need more servers? What do we do about APIs? What do we do about accessibility? It's very practical stuff, and it's not really very hard. You just have to think it through, and it all depends on what your business is. But the pathways from traditional images and you know, content to having that digital twin and all that, feel free to reach out to me, because it's not a very sexy topic, but it is to me. So yeah.
So Cynthia and Matt, thank you so much. Everyone here, thank you all so much for attending this Shape the Future webinar. We'll have the webinar recordings available on YouTube very soon. So thank you, everyone. We're going to wrap up this conversation now. Thank you all.
Thank you very much.